Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. I'm so glad that you've joined us this morning because we have a lot to cover. Of course, Kamala Harris giving a town hall yesterday, or having a town hall yesterday at CNN. We're going to talk about that. We have quite a few things here about the Trump campaign. I do have some local issues as well, and we'll be talking with a couple guests. In the 6 o'clock hour, right around 6:40, we'll be talking with our friends Sylvia and Liesl about their upcoming Walk for Life, the Courting Walk for Life. That's coming up a little bit later on in this hour. In the 7 o'clock hour, we'll be talking with Judge Mary Tarantelli. She is running for family court judge in Chemung County. So that's coming up in the 7 o'clock hour. All right, let's jump right into it this morning as we talk about the importance of voting. Okay, we near early voting, which starts on Saturday, and of course Election Day on November 5th. And we talk about Trump, and we talk about Harris, and we talk about the congressional race and the senatorial race. But we have to always focus as well on the local races. And I think we've done a very good job here on the program getting that information out to you. And I'll get to my list later on of the upcoming 2-week schedule, which is, I would say, quite overwhelming in a good way. By having said that, I bring another message to you of why it's important to know who you're voting for, because we're hearing again from Dolton Mayor Tiffany Henyard, the self-proclaimed super mayor. Tiffany Henyard gave a 90-minute tirade on a Facebook Live video because the meeting in the Thornton Township was canceled because not enough board members showed up. According to this piece by David Proper, in the endless address, the scandal-ridden mayor defended herself against nonstop criticism over her handling of municipal business and finances while calling dissenting officials corrupt. Now, this has been a common trend. Now, remember, she is running for re-election. There's a lot of questions about the finances. So the board said, okay, we want to do an audit with our finances because it looks like you're spending lavishly and our coffers are drained. And she vetoed that audit. And now she's really doing the blame game that everybody's out to get her. Quote, I will be seeking arrests for individuals involved. I'll be pressing charges. It's a lot. And that's just me telling you a little bit, because all this pointing the finger at Tiffany, yes, she refers to herself in this case in the third person, or lying on me, I'm over it. Now it's time for me to speak. As I say, truth speaks. Now, the self-described super mayor didn't expand on what charges she'd like to see leveled, but accused her adversaries of a power and money grab. She also vowed to reveal the full truth regarding the controversy swirling around her at a later date. I like that. We'll get to it later. You know, only one Thornton trustee showed up for the meeting on Tuesday, along with Henyard, after trustee Chris Gonzalez said he wouldn't go to the meeting room because the space was too cramped. Yes, they're getting huge crowds. By the way, she's now being accused of not paying her rent since August. Just a quick update. She's running for re-election. I know she's not in our area, clearly, but it's been a wild ride to follow her quote-unquote career. Okay, enough on that. Another update. Yeah, we're going to jump through a lot of things this morning on the McDonald's issue. Now, I don't want to focus too much in on this. We've already talked about Trump's visit. But one of the reasons why Trump visited that McDonald's was to highlight the fact that Kamala Harris has claimed that she worked at a McDonald's when she was going to school. And the New York Times decided that they were going to corroborate Harris's McDonald's claims. And this goes to show you a quick inside look of what the media is going to look like these next less than 2 weeks, which is to defend Harris as much as possible, as well as try to put out hit pieces on Trump. You may have seen a little bit of that. Well, we definitely saw it yesterday with that piece from The Atlantic with anonymous sources. Well, the New York Times is now being called out for claims that Vice President Harris, that her story has been corroborated about working at McDonald's. Harris claims that she worked at the iconic fast food chain for a summer while she was in college. And it's received a lot of scrutiny because there's no, proof of it. There's no one that even worked with her that's come out and said, oh, I remember that time, or there's no records with the people at McDonald's. No co-workers have been found. On Sunday, after former President Trump spent his day working at McDonald's to troll the vice president, the Times, again, the New York Times, published a report writing, quote, Donald Trump has claimed without evidence, and you may recall that I mentioned this yesterday on the program, without evidence that Miss Harris never worked at the fast food chain. Her campaign and a friend say she did. So, okay, well, the campaign, what does that mean at the end of the day? Well, it turns out that friend was Wanda Kagan, who the Times described as someone, quote, who has known Miss Harris as a teenager and remained in touch with the family for years afterwards. Answering questions by email, Miss Kagan said that Miss Harris's mother, who died in 2009, had told Miss Kagan about the summer job years ago. Miss Kagan said she herself had also worked at one of the fast food chain's many franchises in those years. That's when what us regular folks did, Miss Kagan wrote. Still, she indicated that it had not been a frequent topic of conversation with Miss Harris. We didn't talk much about her McDonald's days back then. However, after doing a little digging and researching into it, the Washington Free Beacon took a swipe at the Times for not acknowledging that Kagan, who they used as the source to corroborate the story, is actually a surrogate for the Harris campaign. Kagan sang her friend's praises during an MSNBC appearance at the DNC convention in Chicago. She also co-hosted the Survivors for Kamala Harris online campaign event and recently visited the White House to celebrate Harris's birthday. The New York Times cited Harris' surrogate and longtime friend Wanda Kagan as its source to corroborate this McDonald's story. And now, is this the biggest story in the world right now? No, it is not. But it goes to show you that even a little bit of criticism or a little bit of pushback, or especially if Trump is talking about it, the media has to go into full defense mode. A spokesman for the New York Times told Fox, quote, this was a thoroughly reported and edited piece of independent journalism. The Times stands behind it completely. So I guess I don't think that same thing would happen if the shoe was on the other foot, that you would be able to corroborate a story with a campaign surrogate. Just a quick update on a story we've been bringing to you. Now, I want to talk about some New York State issues as well as at the federal, obviously, level. We do have, I see Mitch McConnell's releasing an autobiography where he kind of in typical old school Republican, bad mouths the MAGA movement. There's that piece coming out. We've got a lot about, unfortunately, in a way, polling and yesterday's town hall. But I wasn't aware of this, or I would have brought it to your attention, and I apologize. I did not receive a note on this, but Kirsten Gillibrand and Mike Sapercone had a debate last night. If you saw it, I would love to hear your opinion on the debate. It was completely off my radar, and I apologize for not bringing that information to you. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand dipped and dodged a full-on attack from her GOP challenger, Mike Sapercone, over her support of Proposition 1. Now, a couple quick things here. If you recall, we had Mike Sapercone on the program for almost a full hour quite some time ago. He is running against Gillibrand. If you went to the Tri-County Republican fundraiser on Saturday, he was there as well. And we've talked about Proposition 1 a lot, and we're going to continue to talk about Proposition 1 because we're going to have some guests later on, closer to election. When I say closer, I know that's right around the corner. But next week, I believe, or maybe even on the day before election, we're going to talk about Proposition 1. And on Friday, when we talk with Assemblyman Phil Palmisano, we'll discuss it with him as well. But Sapercone challenged Gillibrand on her assertion that Prop 1 would protect abortion and equal rights for women, and argued that the amendment is vaguely worded to allow boys to play women's sports and allow young kids to undergo gender reassignment surgeries without parental permission. This is his quote, and this was on Spectrum News' New York One debate. Quote, it doesn't talk about abortion. We need to remember this is New York State. We've had the most expansive abortion law in the country for over 50 years. This proposition is not changing the way abortion is. It's only taking the rights away from parents. Gillibrand. Now, Gillibrand is not historically known to be a great debater. Very often it is a one-and-done debate. She'll do one debate, and it is, unfortunately, buried. It's not something that you hear about. But she shot back saying, you're absolutely wrong. They have lawsuits that said you have an equal rights amendment in your Constitution and you cover all male reproductive care, but not all female reproductive care, like access to abortion, is fundamentally unequal, Gillibrand said. So that's when Sapper Cohn said, what are equal rights when I think of my daughter? When a man can go into that locker room and say he's a girl and he's going to compete with them? Gillibrand said, do you know how many examples there are in our state? It's less than a handful. You're using a red herring. I like that. That's a new talking point in many instances, just like with Martha Raddatz, where, wow, there's just a few examples of gangs, Venezuelan gangs taking over apartment complex, and J.D. Vance rightfully calling her out for that. So there's only a handful of examples of this. Still, a handful is too many. Sapper Cohn said he was pro-life but would not support a national abortion ban. They also sparred over immigration. Gillibrand called for right-sizing legal immigration into the U.S. on top of dedicating resources to clearing a backlog of asylum seekers taking advantage of the laws currently on the books. Sapper Cohn pointed out that Gillibrand has seen 15 years in the Senate and had the opportunity to address immigration, including a short-lived bipartisan deal that was in the works in the chamber earlier this year. He said, I'm sure you're a powerful, influential person in the United States Senate. Why were you not able to get that bill on the floor of the Senate? They also took a similar tone on Israel, with Sapper Cohn saying, I think we should support Israel as best we can. We shouldn't be micromanaging what Israel's doing. Gillibrand saying, if Israel decides they need to target some part of Iran's infrastructure for nuclear weapons or missile production, some cyber response, it's absolutely in their right to do that because they've already been attacked. Now, Sapper Cohn is trailing Gillibrand significantly. Siena poll released this week had Gillibrand leading with 57% of the vote compared to Sapper Cohn's 31%. Just for the record, Wednesday's debate was held at the University of Albany in the state capitol. So that debate, Sapper Cohn, kind enough to be on this program quite some time ago. Right during the Chemung County Fair. That gives you any idea, because he came the day after he visited the fair. He's been making the rounds throughout the state. I talked to him on Saturday. We're not sure if we'll be able to get another interview in because obviously he's making the last-minute push. He is trailing. But I wanted to mention that debate to you. I'm sure you can still find it online, maybe perhaps on YouTube or one of the streaming services that you use. I plan on doing that now that I'm aware that it happened. Very often the media in New York State tries to keep things like that quiet. If you recall, Governor Cuomo was really good at this, not wanting to give a debate. And then when he did give a debate, he demanded that every single third-party candidate be on the stage with him. So it would be him, his Republican opponent, and like 10 other people. And so very little time spent on any real issue and having him answer anything. In this case, Gillibrand historically, because when Wendy Long, I thought, just destroyed her in a debate. But no one saw it. No one knew what was happening because the media keeps it relatively quiet. It's relegated to small, not small outlets, but relegated to outlets that you may not typically watch to see the promos that it was going to be on. So I did want to pass it on to you if that's something you want to look up later. Okay. Another New York State issue when we come back, and then we're going to dive right into what did you think of Kamala Harris's town hall? What do you think of all the news of the day? You see the number on the bottom of the screen. Feel free to reach out at any time. And we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam is brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Comment from a viewer. John Kelly, once a respected general, now permanent latrine orderly for the Democrat Party. Thank you very much, John Kelly, coming out with these claims about Trump. Not after, if he was nervous, not after the comments allegedly happened, not even a year, 2, 3 years after. Mid-October, of an election year, yes, I think he's shown for quite some time his true colors and his true interests. And to the viewer's point from yesterday, there were some people early on that Trump trusted that perhaps weren't the best to put his trust in, and that's been made crystal clear through the years. A quick two New York State issues. There's a report out from Governor Hochul's office, and what she's doing is trying to what's the word I want to almost protect Democrat candidates by saying, no, the crime is actually down in the state. She issued a deceptively worded statement last week touting substantial, quote, reductions in crime across New York State in 2024. She said, here is the data, despite what you're hearing from the fearmongers out there today. Well, as Jim Quinn said, and now Jim Quinn was executive district attorney in the Queens District Attorney's Office, where he served for 42 years. He said, first, the numbers the governor cited. Listen to this. I'm not going to get into the numbers. I know that gets very wonky. First, the numbers the governor cited came from only 28 of the more than 500 police departments in the entire state. Yes, you heard me right. 28 police departments out of over 500 police departments in New York State. The report she cheered carries on every page the bold-faced notation, quote, current data are preliminary and are subject to change, reminiscent of the federal government's recent Bureau of Labor Statistics on employment revisions and the FBI's corrected crime data. Moreover, those 28 police departments cover just 4.3 million, or 22% of the state's 20 million people. And it's also worth noting that it doesn't cover a single county in New York City, and all of which have Democratic district attorneys. It was obvious that the governor hastily issued the misleading worded press release to assist Democrat candidates who are being hammered on crime and quality of life issues in their races against Republicans for seats in Congress. But the vast majority of the people in the 28 police departments whose stats she cited, 78% live in counties with Republican district attorneys. In other words, people living in counties and towns with Republican DAs are doing very well crime-wise, thank you. And that's a good point. So again, without getting into all the data, it's simple. There's more crime in New York streets because there are more criminals on our streets. And Hochul's sneaky statistics cannot change the fact that bail reform resulted in the death and victimization of thousands of overwhelmingly minority New Yorkers. That's something even our legislators should be able to comprehend. But that's just like when we see polling in the presidential race and elsewhere, that never mind what you're seeing, never mind what you're experiencing, never mind what you're feeling, the inflation's not bad or crime's not bad. What Hochul's trying to do is set up a smoke and mirror show to protect the Democrat candidates in the challenging districts, because remember, her reputation is somewhat on the line because she had such a disastrous run for governor. Yes, she won, but Lee Zeldin came in very close distance of her, and in doing so, really gave the House majority to the Republicans. So she has kind of a redemption tour going on right now where she's trying to make sure that they flip some seats in New York, that more Democrats win this go around. So she's doing everything she possibly can because there's a lot of Democrats behind the scenes, Hakeem Jeffries and others, that are critical of her past performance. And she wants to see herself as a power player, as a star in the Democrat Party, hence why she had that speech at the DNC, though that speech was disastrous and showed she really wasn't ready, quote unquote, for prime time or ready to be on the national scene. One other New York issue before we go to break, and this is a very local issue, and I received this yesterday from Steuben County Public Health. On last Thursday, County Legislative Chair, our friend Kelly Fitzpatrick, County Manager Jack Wheeler, and Public Health Director Darlene Smith, all friends to Frankly Speaking, unveiled a plaque dedicated to memorializing the 300 residents of Steuben County who lost their lives to the COVID-19 pandemic and the first responders, medical personnel, and essential workers who played pivotal roles during the COVID-19 response. This plaque is located at the Civil Defense Training Center, which is 7220 State Route 54 in Bath. I want to show you a picture of said plaque. There you are. The dedication ceremony provided a moment of gratitude and remembrance, reflecting on the tremendous sacrifices made during the crisis and acknowledging the deep loss experienced by so many families. Darlene Smith saying, and I quote, "Our intent for this COVID-19 memorial is to provide a space for all in the community to remember those that we lost and to honor those who sacrificed so much during the response. We hope it provides a measure of peace, acceptance, and resolution to those affected." There you are. Let's take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Boss Security Roof Cam. Contact Boss Security in Horseheads today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you to the viewer raising the good point about Governor Hochul. Don't forget her Chinese spy. Yeah, that was buried in the media relatively quickly. When I say relatively, instantly. So yes, thank you for that reminder. On the national level, folks, 121. Let me do that again. 26,853,121 mail-in and early in-person voting votes have been cast nationally as of 5 a.m. this morning. So nearly 27 million. So I ask the question again, will you be voting early? I know voting early begins on Saturday. Just something to keep in mind, just giving you that number this morning. Now, did you watch Kamala Harris? This is an important question. Did you watch her CNN town hall? Receiving, surprisingly, some criticism after the fact of not really, again, not bringing up policy, going after Trump and not talking about herself. I like the one line, and we'll get to it later on, from one of the CNN analysts saying, well, when it comes to actual policy and substance, well, she didn't want to go there today, which has been something that's been mentioned or almost put in that exact way numerous times about her, which is very odd. So CNN did their takeaways from their own town hall with Kamala Harris. Yes, this is takeaway number one. Yes, Harris thinks Trump is a fascist. Harris was asked Wednesday night if she considers Trump a fascist. Quote, "Yes, I do." But she added she doesn't want voters to take her word for it. And then went to all the Mark Milley, the John Kelly, who was mentioned earlier in this program. So we're just all agreeing we're not tamping down the rhetoric, right? I mean, there's no sense even pretending anymore. When you call the nominee for president of the United States from the Republican Party a fascist, we're just there now. Never mind the 2 assassination attempts on his life, throwing around terms like fascist. The other day we had that article comparing him to not just Adolf Hitler, but also Stalin and Mussolini. But continuing, another takeaway, Harris distanced herself from Biden and promises a new generation of leadership. This is really interesting. She has handled this, if I can say, poorly in the fact that one time everything Biden's done has been good and she helped it and she was there with it and doesn't disagree with a thing, and other times distancing herself. Harris has faced repeated questions on the trail over how and to what degree she would break from Biden on policy. She's been brushing it off. And then you had that awkward, even CNN admitted that awkward exchange on The View when they asked if there was anything she would do different. And there's not a thing that comes to mind, she said, if you recall. Well, on Wednesday night, Harris seemed more comfortable with the proposition and argued that if she was elected, change would follow. My administration will not be a continuation of the Biden administration. I bring to this role my own ideas and my own experience. I represent a new generation of leadership on a number of issues and believe that we have to actually take new approaches. Now, you don't find out what those are. You don't find out what exactly the differences would be. Though she did say Medicare cover home health care for the elderly. She returned to what she described as a new approach. I bring a whole set of different experiences to this job. Pressed by Anderson Cooper, who Anderson Cooper did press her numerous times during this town hall about why she hasn't, during her time as vice president, been more assertive on these points. Harris was short on details, CNN admitting. Later on, she would present a Middle East policy identical to Biden's, but hammered home the talking point. There was a lot that was done during the Biden administration, but there's more to do. I'm pointing out things that need to be done that haven't been done. So that is now, I guess, the talking point on this. Border security and migration are a tricky area for the vice president. So as you can see, CNN somewhat critical of her performance, showing yet again kind of the job that she is doing. She said, let's just fix the problem multiple times. Now, you could argue why not have done it in the last 3.5 years, or how about when you first got in office, instead of Biden just getting rid of all of Trump's executive orders, why not go to Congress when you had full control? And then she contrasted that comment, let's just fix the problem, with Trump's record on border security, where she mocked him for failing to fulfill his promise to build a border wall, which is interesting to mock someone for not completely completing the wall, while she has had to concede on so many points that have been what you could deem as failures during her administration. But saying, I think of what he did and how he did it, and it didn't make much sense because he didn't do much of anything. Harris also pushed back on the idea that she was soft on border security and immigration, saying people have to earn it in gaining American citizenship, and that she wanted to strengthen our border. Another takeaway is Harris wants Sinwar's death to be a moment to end the Israel-Hamas war. Now remember, if Harris had her way, Israel would have never been in Rafah, where they took out Sinwar. But now she's calling for this to be the end to the war. With Sinwar's death, I do believe we have an opportunity to end this war, bring the hostages home, bring relief to the Palestinian people, and work toward a two-state solution where Israel and the Palestinians, in equal measure, have security, where the Palestinian people have dignity, self-determination, and the safety that they so rightfully deserve. Cooper asked Harris if she thought Trump was anti-Semitic. Now, imagine where you have a campaign where she has had to twist herself up in the pretzels to appease, as Van Jones said, the anti-Semitic bigotry that is marbling the Democratic Party. But remember, they're going to always push this idea. And Harris even brought up the Atlantic piece with no actual sources in that piece. I mean, the yellow journalism, the purest example of a hit piece. But she said, I believe Donald Trump is a danger to the well-being and security of America. That is her answer. Harris speaks Republicans' language as she courts anti-Trump GOP. That's coming from CNN. I travel this state and others with Liz Cheney. She has endorsed me. Dick Cheney is voting for me. Over 400 previous members of Republican administrations have endorsed my candidacy. And the reason why, among them, is a legitimate fear based on Donald Trump's words and actions that he will not obey an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. A little while later, when discussing abortion rights, Harris again mentioned Liz Cheney, an unapologetically pro-life politician who, as the vice president put it, doesn't agree with what's been happening in states that ban abortion. Anyway, so I guess Liz Cheney is the secret to her campaign. And then another voter question challenged Harris on her shift to the middle during her 3-month presidential campaign. Since becoming the nominee, the vice president has changed her stance on key issues, including backing away from her past support for redirecting police department funds. See, they don't like to say defunding the police. You notice how that changed? And banning fracking. Harris says she doesn't want to ban fracking and hasn't moved to do so as vice president, while reiterating that her values when it comes to addressing climate change haven't changed. So my positions have changed, but my values haven't changed. It's very strange. She gives the same answers, just like with some of the word salad things she says. She gives them repeatedly, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense. It seems like someone would help her and correct her. So we're going to talk more about the town hall. I know I'm running late. They did fact check her. Now, because there wasn't a lot of substance, CNN only fact checked a few things, and one was deemed false when she talked about her fracking record. Harris did not make her personal position on fracking clear during her only debate in 2020, the general election's vice presidential debate against then Vice President Mike Pence. Harris never explicitly stated a personal position on fracking during that debate. Anyway, we got to take a break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox receiving so many comments. We will get to the comments here in just a little bit as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. And thanks again to Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs, being the sponsor of that, I think, amazing roof cam. We do have a lot of comments. Sorry, I can't get to them right this second. Running just a little bit late because we do have our guests coming up here in just a little bit, Sylvia and Liesel. We're going to be talking about the Corning Walk for Life, which is Saturday in Centerway at 1 p.m. So mark your calendars for that. I know it's a busy time of year with so many things going on. Oh, my goodness. So many comments coming in. Guys are getting worked up this morning. I love it. Did anybody out there watch the town hall? Stephen Collinson from CNN says, fascism and food prices. The issues driving the last 12 days of the election. No presidential candidate in history has had to field questions on grocery prices and her opponents alleged fascism at the same event. But the almost absurd linkage between these two issues that Kamala Harris must confront perfectly tells the story of the 2024 election and America's fierce estrangement 9 years into the Donald Trump era. So it's on Trump. Okay. Harris nods along when voters asked about the Supreme Court. Should it be packed to 12 justices? Would you be in favor of expanding the court to say 12 so each justice has only one circuit court other than the Chief Justice to assist in making judgments more balanced, the voter asked. Harris, while nodding along the whole time, said, I do believe that there should be some kind of reform of the court, and we can study what that actually looks like. There's no question that the American people increasingly are losing confidence in the Supreme Court. The vice president has a percentage point higher approval rating than the high court, 45 to 44, according to Gallup. That is, and I know many politicians do this, so this isn't just on Harris. Have you noticed we have to study that? We have to look into that in a response to not give a response, right? To not give a real response. Or this is something that Harris has really been doing from the beginning when defending her flip-flop, if you will, on fracking, saying, on fracking, I've been very clear. We kind of dispensed with this in 2020. I'm not going to ban fracking. So I've been clear, but my position is completely changed, has done a 180. I've been completely clear. Now, I'm sure you're wondering what Harris's main weakness is as a politician. Well, it is that she works too hard. And this is almost a cliche in the business world where someone is being interviewed for a job and they say, well, I just work too hard. I just care too much. When asked what your biggest weakness is, what weakness do you bring to the table and how do you plan to overcome them while you're in office? A voter named Joe asked Kamala Harris. That's a great question, Joe. And I think that perhaps weakness, some would say, but I actually think it's a strength, is I really do value having a team of very smart people around me who bring to my decision-making process different perspectives. Now, that's interesting because isn't it like the retention rate in her office, like 90% of the people have left her office that work behind the scenes. But anyway, I bring folks around. I may not be quick to have the answer as soon as you ask it about a specific policy issue. I'm kind of a nerd, she said, before breaking into her famous, we'll say, laugh. She won't say who's more pro-Israel, her or Trump. Do you believe you'd be more pro-Israel than Donald Trump? Anderson Cooper asked her. She said, I believe that Donald Trump is dangerous. Well, that's a good answer to that question. Well, she's got to be very careful, folks. And it's very unfortunate. It's why many speculate that she didn't pick Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro to be her running mate because, as Van Jones said, hardly a Republican, Van Jones said there's that anti-Semitic bigotry marbling the Democratic Party. So she doesn't want to lose that vote. So that's why she, in a sense, refused to answer that question. She defended her inaction on the border crisis, saying, I think we did the right thing. Do you wish you'd done those executive orders in 2022, 2023? Cooper asked. And she said, I think we did the right thing. But the best thing that can happen for the American people is that we have bipartisan work happening. She also calls for eliminating the Senate filibuster. Let me ask you, you talked about codifying Roe v. Wade. That would obviously require 60 votes in the Senate, a majority of the Senate. If that's not possible to codify in the House, what do you do? She said, I think we need to take a look at the filibuster, to be honest with you. So there you are. Some radical ideas coming from Harris at the town hall, saying that she is not perfect, but will admit a mistake, but then will not admit a mistake on anything. So I'm not perfect, but then will not admit that there was any mistakes being made. All right, we got to take a break because coming up next, our guest, Sylvia and Liesel, are going to tell us about the Corning Walk for Life, which is this Saturday at 1 p.m. You're going to hear all about it coming up next, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We're broadcasting from the Hesselson studio here on historic Market Street in Corning. And joining me in the studio this morning is Sylvia and Liesel. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
We've been promoting this all week, and I'm excited to find out more. Tell us about the Corning Walk for Life. Just the who, what, when, where, and why.
So the Corning Walk for Life is going to be on Saturday, October 26th, starting at Centerway at 1 p.m. It's a walk for life to advocate for the unborn and just raise some awareness about pro-life issues.
And what was it that got you interested in starting a walk for life?
Yeah, so and a couple years ago, I went to the March for Life in D.C., and it was an amazing experience. It really just kind of woke up it really raised awareness in me. So I was talking to Liesel about it, and she's very passionate about these things as well. Yeah. So we were on a late night phone call. We talked for about 2 hours, and we just, it kind of just, the idea came up, and we decided we're going to do this.
So this is the whole planning committee right here.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes,
so when did this start? You said you got back from the March for Life. So when did you say we've got to do this same thing?
Around July, mid-July, probably.
You went to the March for Life for like a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And then I think she just mentioned it during, I think I brought up that, we should go to the March for Life sometime. She's like, I went. Oh, yeah. And then as we were talking, it just kind of clicked that, what if we just did one here?
Was there a specific reason for October 26th?
Well, October is the Respect Life Month. And it's beautiful weather.
Well, be careful what you say.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
it should be. Yes, it should be. And again, we're talking about the Corning Walk for Life, starting in Centerway Square at 1 p.m. on October 26th. That's Saturday. Also, the first day of early voting. Just to make that note as a side note. So, how much work has been behind this? How much work goes into something like this?
A lot of it's just meeting together, making sure that we're contacting people, that we're promoting it, that we're getting things done that need done before we do it, and just we meet whenever we can. We call a lot and keep in contact about it.
And you had mentioned when you went to the Walk for Life, it raised your awareness. So what's important about this, and maybe different than other walks, I was in a walk on Alzheimer's, that's to raise awareness, but also raise funds. I think it's an important point to make that this is about just raising awareness, pure and simple.
Yeah, celebrating life, raising awareness, and that's it.
What has the reaction been so far?
Yeah, so for most people we find, we've spread the word too, they're very, supportive. Maybe not everyone agrees with these ideas, of course, but I think it's good to just spread it around, and if you don't reach out, no one's going to show up.
Right.
So overall, a really positive reaction with the community, though.
Do people need to register for this event, or can they just show up?
No, this is just a show up at Centerway at 1 p.m., and we would love to have you there.
And we had talked a little off the air, and this some people may not know how to handle this, but where can people find out more?
Sorry,
Instagram,
well,
right? You can say it.
We have an Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah, no Facebook, so, just Instagram this time, but,
Okay. What should a walker know? Because obviously this is coming up in very quick time here. So what should a walker know or someone that wants to get involved?
Right. So, we want to have you there. So as long as you're there, it's great. If you can, wear blue or pink or a pro-life shirt, and just so that, we can tell who our group is, and it's good to have that as kind of a theme. And then also, if you want to bring a peaceful sign, that would be great, but we'll have some too in case people don't have them.
And I think what's interesting, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because you've attended, but a Walk for Life is about raising awareness for life, but it's not what you would consider a political rally, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a very peaceful. I don't know what the best word is.
Yeah.
I mean,
Demonstration, maybe?
Just
Peaceful.
walk, yeah.
Yeah.
I
A
think
walk.
something we talked about when we started planning this is we don't want this to be political and not even religious. This is just something that we think is morally correct, so that anyone, any political party, any religion can come and support.
Now, are you normally, both of you normally active in causes like this, or is this kind of mean so much to you that this is your focus?
Lisa, go.
I think that I've always been like passionate about pro-life stuff, but this is the first time I've actually really done something to do something about it.
Does that feel good?
Yeah.
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 Because at the end of the day, when you're done walking, and how long's the walk?
Around an hour.
About an hour. So after that hour walk, you're going to feel proud of yourselves, right? And rightfully so.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
hope so, right? And I didn't ask you.
Oh, yeah, same sort of thing. I mean, I've attended the March for Life. That was great. But, like, I mean, just little things here and there. Good things in our community we have. But this is the first time I've really, like, focused in and done something, you know?
And
Planned it ourselves.
Yeah, and planned it yourselves, and
Right.
that makes it even more special. So when the smoke clears and it's all over, do you think you'll do more of these?
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're hoping to make this annual.
Yeah, and like a yearly tradition right around the same time, perhaps?
Probably,
Well,
Yeah, probably.
Well, I hope that you come back on the program then. I hope I'm still here in a year. Who knows? But this is really remarkable. And again, to kind of recap, the Walk for Life in Corning, we've heard of the Walk for Life elsewhere. And I think it's just kudos to you for getting involved. Again, what should people know before they head to Centerway on Saturday at 1 p.m.?
So just dress for the weather, you know, look ahead of time, and wear pink or blue or pro-life shirt if you can. Bring a peaceful sign if you can. If not, just show up. Also, there may be negative feedback. We don't know. So if there is, just we warn you to please not react and just keep walking, you know?
Yeah.
So
This is peaceful, so don't interact with people who aren't with our group.
Yeah.
That's a big thing.
That makes sense.
We don't want to cause fights.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. Did you already, when you were planning this, how did you come up with the walk path? Just out of, that's just me being kind of nerdy and wondering.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we kind of went on Google Maps. We were like, well, what's the best way to do this? Printed it out, did some highlighting, and then we walked it ourselves and timed it and just kind of made a few changes.
And because it is walking, this really is for every age, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you were at the Walk for Life in Washington, is that a pretty much across the board age-wise?
I think, yeah, from what I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a lot of young people involved in Walk for Life in general, do you know?
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
really.
I'm not trying to make you the spokesperson for
No,
Walk for Life, but
I couldn't say. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
it'll be interesting to see on Saturday the demographic and the people that get involved.
Yeah, it will.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Did you
thank
like
you.
it? I think it
it's
sounds
good.
good. Okay. Congratulations on doing this. That's wonderful. Okay.
Thanks.
All right. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. The Frankly Speaking Root Camp, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. That beautiful view. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking. Thank you to our guests, Sylvia and Liesel, for telling us all about the Corning Walk for Life. Again, Saturday, 1 o'clock in Centerway. It's nice to see young people getting involved in such important issues. So thank you to Sylvia and Liesel. Couple comments from viewers. Good morning, Frank. If Kamala had been truthful about Biden's mental state, she could have been the first woman president by now by pushing for invoking the 25th Amendment, which would have shown that she actually had a few leadership skills. If she loses the election, she'll just be remembered as the last person in the room at the Trump Haters Club meeting. Having a woman president will just have to wait for a while, but we know that if the first woman president is a Republican, it won't count anyway. Thank you very much, viewer. Another viewer. The Democrats can truly throw things at the wall to see what sticks. They're like a moving target when it comes to an election. It is interesting to see what they're trying to throw, just like this Atlantic piece that Harris cited during the town hall yesterday. Then you have, you're going to have various hit pieces from now until November the 5th. So yes, good point. Next up, oh, by the way, I forgot that. There we go. Good morning. Good morning. Just a trivial wondering. I like that. If I was to say something about a person that wasn't true and was in fact proven as such, isn't that illegal? Especially if harm was caused. Isn't that defamation of character? Why don't these types of laws apply to politicians and in general the media? I think a lot of it has to do, and I know former President Trump mentioned that when he was president about libel laws and slander laws and like that. It's very difficult when you are a public figure. The rules are different than, say, for a person, on the street. I think that's what it all boils down to. It's just almost impossible to win that case. That's the way I understand it, and that's the way Trump kind of described it, saying that he wanted to see those laws and rules changed. Next up, Trump simply stays on message, good or bad. He's consistent. She's all over the place. Yes, and to your point, there's sometimes I think many people could say that Trump will get on something and you think, okay, probably enough about talking about that for a while, but he stays on message. That's definitely for sure. There's a lot of coverage after the fact of how Harris did at yesterday's town hall. Van Jones, former Obama advisor and CNN contributor, was talking about the town hall. David Axelrod said she was talking about how to turn the page on the kind of craziness that we've seen from Donald Trump, this kind of incessant divisiveness, and focus on his political enemies instead of the problems of the American people. When she said, I just want to repeat this again, I would love to hear this 100 times between now and Election Day. He's got an enemies list. I've got a to-do list. Okay, that's her line. Well, Van Jones says, look, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are not taking the same exam. I think it bothers people. They're not taking the same exam. He gets to be lawless. She has to be flawless. That's what's unfair. That's what's unfair. Does she have to be flawless? I don't think that's the case at all. I think what people, even with in her own party, are calling for is actual substance and policy. But that's what's unfair tonight. They're not taking the same exam. Look, she has policies. She may not articulate them perfectly every time. She may not put the stories in the right places, but she's fighting for actual ideas that will help real people. And he's talking about we know about Arnold Palmer. And so they're not taking the same exam. That's really making him mad. I'll use that term. So she has to be flawless. He can be lawless, and she has to be flawless. Is that how you see this race? But we have to take a break. Wow, hour number 1 already in the books. Thanks again to our friends Sylvia and Liesl to tell us about the Corning Walk for Life. Coming up, Judge Mary Tarantelli will be on the program in the 7 o'clock hour. Also, tomorrow on the show, we're going to hear about Apple Ridge and their upcoming health fair. Which is actually tomorrow. We're going to hear all about it. So get ready to mark your calendar tomorrow and find out everything that you need to know about the Apple Ridge Health Fair. And then it's Fridays with Phil. Assemblyman Phil Palmisano will be our guest tomorrow. On Monday, we'll be talking with Michaela Rossetti Azimi. She is running for Steuben County Court Judge and Family Court Judge. On Tuesday, we'll be talking with Supreme Court candidate for the 7th Judicial District, Ed White. On Wednesday, we'll be talking to Supreme Court candidate, New York State Supreme Court, 7th Judicial District, Stacey Romeo. That's on Wednesday. On Thursday, former Congressman Joe Sempolinski. And then on Friday, Matt McCarthy, running for Steuben County Court and Family Court. All right, we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking for hour number 2. Stay with us. Hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got a busy first hour, so we got to pack in a lot in this hour as well. Now, on CNN, where Kamala Harris had her town hall, afterwards, some have even equated it to a roast by the analysts and commentators about the job that she did. Dana Bash, who gave that kind of cushy interview to Harris, the first major interview that she gave while being the nominee, saying, what I'm hearing from people who I've been talking to, this is Dana Bash, if her goal was to close the deal, they're not sure she did that. Having said that, anytime that she can be in front of an audience and interacting with voters is a win as far as her campaign goes, and they are very happy about that. Well, why there's been numerous opportunities for that. So I'm confused why this was a special engagement. Anytime, it doesn't sound like any time. You have to give a press conference. And when we say any time, how many opportunities has she had to do interviews with whoever she wants? I mean, she's the nominee for President of the United States. And it took her how long before she even had one interview? But I'll continue. Veteran Democrat operative David Axelrod said the things that would concern me is when she doesn't want to answer a question. Her habit is to kind of go to word salad city. And she did that on a couple of answers. Yeah, she's got kind of the bagged lines of my values haven't changed, or I've been consistent on that, those type of things. And then not really giving an answer. And then when she does get in an uncomfortable position, or one that she doesn't really want to take a strong stance on, she does go for those word salads. And I know that term has kind of become cliche, but I think it's the acceptable nomenclature at this point, that's really what it has to be described as. Continuing, Axelrod said, one was on Israel. Anderson Cooper asked a direct question. Would you be stronger on Israel than Trump? And there was a 7-minute answer. But none of that related to the question he was asking, arguing that it was a missed opportunity as well when asked about immigration. She would acknowledge no concerns about any of the administration's policies, and that's a mistake. Sometimes you have to concede things, and she didn't concede much. She just didn't want to go there, said Abby Phillips. She just didn't want to go there. Why? Because she didn't want to talk about immigration policy, or she just doesn't want to talk about policy in general. That's what's interesting, because someone else used a term like this as well, which was she just doesn't want to go there, or today was not the day she wanted to talk about policy. That's quite a weird excuse. The bleak reviews came after Cooper, who moderated the town hall, forcefully pushed Harris on policy matters, at times uncomfortably asking her the same question repeatedly when she failed to give a straight answer. National Democrats have told the Post that they're concerned about Harris's standing less than 2 weeks ahead of Election Day. So this is not really calming people's nerves in a way. Did you watch it, though? I will pose that question. Did you watch the town hall? Have you watched the clips, perhaps like I did, after the fact? I guess some of these, I don't know if it's just election season or what, but some of these start to blend together. You forget that certain things are on at certain times. But our guest is here, so we got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Boss Security Roof Cam. Thank you to Boss Security. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Aiken, and joining me live in the studio for the second time, Judge Tarantelli. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Good morning, Frank. Thanks for having me.
This is great to have you back in. So what's it like? We're getting so near to Election Day. How's the campaign going? How's it feeling?
You know, it is tiring, but it's enjoyable in a way. You're knocking on doors. Mm-hmm. You're going to different events that typically, especially as a sitting judge, I can't go to normally. So it's nice to get out there. It's nice to meet everyone. It's nice to get back to feeling what the community is looking for from you and what they're concerned with.
And I want to talk about that in a little bit, but I like to set the scene because everybody knows by now, because we've had so many judicial candidates on the program, that there's only certain things I can ask you. But I do think it's important to start this. Let's start first with explaining the race for people. Meaning, you know, every voting is different because we got Steuben County. I don't want people to get confused. This is specifically for Chemung County Family Court. What's the ballot going to look like?
Correct. So you'll see 3 names on the ballot. Two of us, all 3 of us actually carry 2 lines. Okay. So you will be listed 6 times, but you vote for 2. Okay. You don't have to vote for 2, but you can vote for 2. And I'm continuing. I would like to continue in my same position. I've been the family court judge in Chemung County for 10 years. So I'm running for re-election. Okay. Legislature put a second position in. We now have a spot for a second family court judge, and that's why you'll see where you can vote 2.
That's interesting. You're on the ballot with 6 times. Is that what
there'll be 6.
Yeah, 6.
We'll be listed 6 times.
That's right.
2 times for each of us.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your background. You mentioned you've been doing the job, which is always helpful when you're running for re-election. So tell us about your background.
So I've been in family court for 25 years. The first 15 was as an attorney representing children, parents. I sat in all the different seats that a lawyer can sit in family court. And then taking the bench, I'm kind of a proactive judge in that if there are things going on and my staff can be utilized in a different way, I'll do the clerk's job.
Okay.
I'll sometimes handle security if another judge needs security and we're down a man.
Wow.
And that's how we are in family court. We do what we need to collaborate, get things done, and really be there for the court user.
Now, why originally did you decide to get into family court?
When before I went to law school, I was the product of an attorney father. Okay. And he said, boy, there's an easier way to make a living. It's very stressful.
Yeah.
Don't go to law school. Don't do this. So I worked in his office for a while, and no matter what he said, I really liked it.
Yeah.
And he did a lot of family law. So I kind of knew that was my niche even before I went to law school.
Yeah.
And so I was one of maybe 3 in law school that specialized in family law. They thought I was crazy.
And what is it about family law? Because I think, and I've mentioned this with every candidate, it seems like with family court, it's got to be a double-edged sword. There's got to be times when it's almost life-changing for you, and then other times where it's just got to be stuck on your mind for days.
There are those occasions where it carries with you, and you can't help that.
Yeah.
But at least you feel like you're in it. You're doing it. You're not standing on the sidelines, yellow carding people.
Oh, that's
You're
true.
actually in it. I think it's one of the primary courts that empowers the court users. I mean, you're really there to educate them, give them the tools, and put every effort into them resolving it. And if they can't, then it falls to you.
And what has we talk about experience, and sometimes people go through their whole background, but with you, you've been on the court. So what has that experience been like these last 10 years, and what do you hope to bring to the next 10 years?
Well, it wasn't a total shock because I did primarily represent children, which meant I was in the middle.
Right.
I was talking to both sides of both parents, grandparents, whoever it was, and what they were looking for. And then, of course, my client, and trying to balance all of those things, even when just representing the children. So that wasn't the big change. The big change really was seeing that there are a lot of other things that we can do if we maximize agency support, consolidate services, use our time smartly and our resources smartly. And that's been really a big energy for me after taking the bench, trying to make the most out of family court.
Sure. And what's it going to be like? I know the workload is quite heavy, right? I can say that. What's it going to be like now? Do you have any idea with 2 positions?
Well, there's a plan,
Yeah.
and obviously, if I'm reelected, I think that's going to be the plan. If I'm not,
Good
wouldn't
luck.
be fair to anyone else. Yes, but there is a plan to make sure that when we run courts, because there could be the capacity for running 4 courts in Chemung County at one time, and we have a shortage of attorneys, so that's not smart. So the idea is that we may shift some of the roles that our other judges who carry several hats would do. But we'd have the 2 full-time family court judges, and then we'd have at least 1 more carrying some piece of family court. So that way there's more time for the court user. We can hear cases faster, and I'm hoping to have a specialty court introduced.
Oh, interesting. Can you tell us more about that? Or?
Sure, absolutely. So I was fortunate a few years ago. I was appointed to acting Supreme Court. And with that, the New York court system is a little complicated.
Yes, it
if
sure
you carry
is.
this title, the clerks are on this title. But if you're in this title, the clerks are a different title. And so there are certain things you can and can't do depending upon what space you're at as a judge. Supreme Court judges can carry specialty courts. Okay. And the specialty courts are where you kind of slow things down. You consolidate all of the different providers, wraparound services, and they're all at the table together, trying to work with a family and individual to make sure that it's not just in and out and then see ya.
Yeah.
That it's really, there's a learning, there's a carryover after, so that we don't have the recidivism.
Yeah. How difficult will it be to implement something like that?
Well, right now the state is a big fan of it.
Oh,
and,
okay.
and, it's like fashion. The courts are the same way. Things come in and things
Sure.
go out, and there are trends. And right now there's a real trend and an awareness of specialty courts being successful. I think the push was really the opiate courts because there was such a crisis.
Yeah.
And they've seen where those wraparounds, those are the true success stories. Well, that transcends to other areas
Sure.
of the courts.
And you had mentioned in your previous answer about shortage of attorneys. Why do you think that is? We talked about it with Brian Maggs yesterday, this idea of the shortage of attorneys.
Well, there is an easier way to make a living.
Yeah.
So I
Your
do
father
get that.
was right.
Yeah, he was right. It is. It's a lot of work. It's hard work. And the initial investment is really tough.
Yeah.
The price of education is so high that I think that scares people away. The length of time that it takes to actually become a practicing attorney.
Right.
Your bachelor's, you've got to work on your Juris Doctorate. You got to pass pass the bar. And so there's a high level of commitment right from the onset. And we're not in an area and time frame where people are into commitments.
Right, well, that's very true.
But, when I was in law school, there was the gluttony, Times were making comments about, you can't go anywhere without stepping on a lawyer.
Yeah, right.
And so it is whiplash to see that. And I think also PR. I mean, this is the place to be. Be a nurse. Don't be a lawyer.
Of course.
And so you don't have the energy focused. But I think it's going to come back around.
Yeah, because it must make things so difficult. I mean, without the attorneys, I mean, like you said, there's jokes and things like that, but without the attorneys, you're in a really rough spot.
It is. And other counties are really struggling. They have huge delays. I mean, to the point of a crisis almost. Again, we're lucky. We have 2 different offices. We call them conflict office. We have the public defender, public advocate. Okay. That's helped, but they've even struggled to keep attorneys. We use it really smartly. All the judges talk. We consolidate. If one has this, we'll swap the schedule in order for an attorney to appear before them. I'll call a case out of order to get an attorney on their way to the other judge. We just make sure we communicate every day. We have a system in place for our scheduling where we know where the attorneys are. And we also try to be less pompous about the expectations from the attorneys and more practical.
Right. Well, that makes sense. I mean, at some point, you kind of got to cut your losses a little bit and say we got to deal with what we've got, right?
Well, most of us were practitioners.
Yeah.
We've been there, asked to be in 3 different places at once.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. And now I always ask the question why I run. Well, obviously you've been doing the job, and so you're running for re-election. Why did you run originally?
Because, and it came fast. I never planned on that. I had been a family court judge for 15 years. I'd been in the court almost every day.
Yeah.
Everybody knew me there. And so when the judge that was retiring kind of said, hey, I'm thinking about retiring, he planted the seed.
Yeah.
And that was it. He said, yes, that would be the next step.
Well, what's interesting is, especially the first time you're running, what a commitment. What if you don't like it? 10 years? Right? I mean,
it wasn't for me because that
You knew
was
it.
home.
Yeah,
I
you
was
knew
there
it.
every
That's
day,
true.
all day.
Yeah. But it is a 10-year term. That's amazing.
It is a lengthy commitment, but it takes that long to really get moving and grooving.
Yeah.
You're building relationships, you're building
yeah.
collaborations. You're handed the conflicts that were there before that you don't know why people are conflicted. You kind of work through those to get a team that really moves and grooves.
Now, you were talking about the campaign, and it's really down to the nitty-gritty right now. Obviously, early voting starts on Saturday already. Isn't that wild? Where did the time go? Doesn't it seem like just yesterday we were getting
yes
petitions?
and no.
Yeah, well, yeah, not for you probably.
Seems daunting, and then it seems like it flew by.
Yes, absolutely. So how, when you mentioned the campaign's going great, what have you learned when you're knocking on doors, you're talking to people? What has been the major issues that you're seeing?
That I think there are a lot of people, thankfully, that don't have to utilize family court. Yeah. And so their thought about family court maybe is built on something else, TV shows, secondhand knowledge. And so there's a lot of education going on as I meet with people. They have a lot of questions. I think most people are frustrated because they don't understand some of the complications that prevent us from getting to that good decision.
Sure.
And so the weighing of rights between parents and kids and grandparents, so that's come up quite a bit.
And you're probably used to it by now, but I know when I do the disclaimer at the beginning of the program about how I can't ask you certain things, do people ask you very certain things that you just have to decline?
It's not really.
Okay.
They start to, but
Yeah.
I just let them know I can't talk about a particular case.
Yeah.
Can I talk about a facet of the law? Absolutely. How things are applied? Absolutely. A particular outcome? No.
Yeah. That's so interesting to me.
But educating people is the best.
Oh,
Once you do that, I think their expectations are more reasonable. So
Sure.
why wouldn't you start with that?
That is a very good point. What do you think the biggest factor will be? Because obviously you've been seeing it for 10 years. What do you think the biggest factors is going to be in the next 10 years?
Smart use of services.
Yeah, so
we don't have the services we need. It's everywhere. It's in every business, every facet of our community. But the agencies, the mental health services, substance abuse treatment, supervision programs for visitation, there's such a shortage. And trying to, again, apply the smartest use to those.
Yeah. And it must be, so difficult, especially in family court, when we talk with every guest, this seems like about the opioid crisis, the fentanyl crisis, and homelessness, and these type of things. Is it almost heightened, for lack of a better word, when you deal with it in family court?
Oh, absolutely. That's that domino effect.
Yeah.
So yes, the person, the user, their struggle with life and death issues.
Yeah.
So that's scary. That then leads to homelessness because it didn't just happen, so they burn bridges.
Yeah.
And then now you have kids that aren't getting support, or kids that are having their own mental health issues because this parent has, their issues seep into the rest of the family. And so you have enablers. You have kids that are predisposed to substance abuse issues just by virtue of being exposed in utero.
Yeah.
So yes, it permeates all of the family and generationally.
Yeah, but it must be also on the back end of that, like we said originally, such a good feeling when you see somebody's life change because of a decision that you ultimately made.
It is, but the decisions that I make that change their lives, to me, aren't as impactful. The decisions the family makes, because you gave them tools or educated them that are successful, that gives me chills right now.
I'm sure.
So they're doing it because there has the real potential for them to feel good about it. I don't want to give somebody a decision and they feel awful about it. I'm going to do it if I have to.
Right.
But for them to be part of that team and kind of lead the charge, that's the best.
Yeah. And I like the term that you used, the tools and education, because when we think of judges, we think of maybe like, the TV shows, right? And the robe and then whatever. But you're really about getting them the help that they need at the end of the day.
Sometimes I'm the traffic guard. I'm like, when I need a whistle, and I'm like, you here, you that, and I'm making the calls and demanding that an agency person comes to court because we don't have the family network like we used to.
Right.
Where grandma was home and could take care of the kids if you had a job interview, you had to go.
Sure.
You could call your preacher,
right,
and they would help counsel the couple. You had generations of good advice from family and those supports. And so now we have to rely on the community more.
That's amazing. Before we go, I did want to ask, because I try to ask all candidates, how about endorsements? How's endorsements going?
Endorsements are great.
Yeah.
They're happy to, but I'm the easy incumbent. I've been there forever. A lot of the, they know me.
Yeah.
And so, but the ones that really meant a lot were the ones that have witnessed firsthand. So, Sheriff Schramm, County Exec Chris Moss, the Chief Clerk, the court officers, what can I do to help you? You have the typical heads of business, which I thank them.
Right.
You need that as well, and they're friends in the community, and they carry nice titles. But those are the biggies, and then the teachers union, the Elmira Teachers Union. Very proud of that. Typically, a Republican doesn't get that.
No.
and I've been hard on them sometimes. Subpoenaed them to come to court because I need their help with this family. Yeah. And they've been there. Right. So I appreciate that very
that's
much.
telling, because you're right. That's not a typical Republican.
It's not a typical.
But
it's not a go-to.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that because you second guess yourself even after 10 years, and to hear from people who are impacted by your decisions that we feel like you're doing a good job. That felt good.
And you mentioned Republican, and it's so interesting. And I know we've talked about this last time, but you are running on the Republican line and the conservative line.
Correct.
It's interesting that right now you can be political, but for 10 years you can't be.
It's a strange thing.
Could that ever change, I wonder? Where a judge doesn't have to run?
Well, what's interesting is, when they did this legislatively, they created the family court in 1960, some odd years there within there, and it was legislatively done. Yeah. And so they said, okay, every county has to have a family court judge, except for New York City is going to be its own family court.
Okay.
But they're appointed.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
The rest of the state runs.
Isn't that interesting?
Isn't it? It's just...
Typical.
Back in the day, and it never really outlived that. I mean, it's political in its own way there, but it is by an appointment, not a vote. Yeah. If I ever had my druthers, there would be, just like any interview panel, you'd have to have certain qualifications, years of service that are relevant to that field, and then you get on the ballot and welcome it. The more people that run, the more people that are involved, yes, that would be great. But no, I've been in a cave for 10 years, and it makes sense in a way.
Yeah, it does.
Because people have a feeling like, I was involved in your campaign, you got to give me good decisions.
Oh, right.
And you should never. The court should be honest. It should be open to everyone. It should be fair to everyone, regardless of your political party or involvement in a campaign.
And I was surprised to find out, I never realized how tough and difficult your campaign finances are.
Oh, yeah. We have much more committed
scrutiny.
Reporting, do's and don'ts.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was just the political kind
It
of
is
nerd
very
in me.
restrictive.
But
Well,
wow.
we have to take a course before we can run as well,
I'm sure.
which other candidates don't have to do.
Which is kind of wild. And the campaign finance is very difficult for someone running for town council, let alone, and yours is the next level. So that's
Yeah,
really,
it is hard.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is hard is that there are so many supporters. 10 years ago, I had a huge group that supported me.
Yeah.
And I felt bad because they probably were saying, well, where is she now?
Yeah.
She didn't give back.
That's a good point.
And a lot of people don't realize we can't.
Yeah.
We, 6 to 9 months before after the very first event. So you have a first event in a season,
Yeah.
you can go back 9 months.
Okay.
That's when you can start to be political before you're going to run.
Okay.
And then for 6 months after. And then after that, you go in the cave.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. So they support you, and they're so excited that you win. And then the next dinner, Republican dinner next year, you can't be there.
Now they're running for something.
Yeah.
Well, where are you now? You didn't give back.
Yeah,
Why weren't you there for me?
Where's
And
my thank you
yeah,
note?
they don't
Yeah.
realize. And
That's
it doesn't feel right.
Yeah, that was a side tangent, though.
Yeah,
But before we go, because I know you got to get going, and I got to get going too. How do you find out more about your campaign?
So I have a Facebook page. I have, Instagram, but also my website is really informative. It's www.reelectjudgetarantelli.com.
Okay.
And that has everything. And it has links to other services, information you might want to know about, because that is the key. There's so much out there, and the news, and this little clip, and this ad, and this flyer, and go to the websites, see what what the individuals put down, and then follow up on any links that they provide.
Yep, I totally agree. In closing, what would you say to voters before they either early vote or head to the booth on November 5th?
Vote, first of all, no matter what. Your voice does matter. But secondarily, vote for me because I give you 3 for 1.
Yes.
If I am not reelected, we do lose the supervising family court judge spot in Chemung County. We do lose the additional acting Supreme Court spot.
Yeah.
No matter the qualifications of the new candidates, they just can't be eligible for that.
That's great. Well, best wishes. I
Thank
wish
you.
you the best of luck.
Thanks,
for
Frank.
being on
I
the show.
appreciate you having us.
All right, we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us.
Thank
The Boss Security Roof Cam. Give them a call today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you again to Judge Tarantelli for being on the program this morning. Really appreciate it. And also before the judge, we had Sylvia and Liesel telling us about the Corning Walk for Life on October 26th, which of course is Saturday, which is also the first day of early voting, and that's at Centerway here in Corning at 1 p.m. I want to thank them, and a viewer wants to thank them. This is coming from a viewer. Good morning, Frank. Well, hey, good morning. A shout out to Sylvia and Liesel for taking this important step and standing up for life with a big heart emoji and thank you. Isn't that nice? Yes, it is always nice to see young people get involved, especially on such an important issue, realizing the importance of it, and realizing really, what's the term I want to use? The chance you take when you put yourself out and your beliefs out like that. So I really did appreciate them. I think it goes without saying, obviously that interview was pre-recorded because they had school and they had a half day yesterday. That's why it is not sunny out right now. And I think that goes without saying. Okay. We got some other comments. We'll get to those comments here after the next break. Let's get back to it. I guess I should have been more prepared and got my paperwork together. We were talking about the town hall with Kamala Harris last night. If you watched it, I'd love to hear from you. Some of the takeaways from the New York Post. She said that they've done the right thing on the border. We had the CNN's takeaways. That was one of the big ones from them. I'm not going to go through all the quotes. I think I've probably quoted enough, but that she did say that Trump is a fascist and creates an enemies list, and she creates a to-do list. But the panel afterwards, very critical of the way she handled some of the answers, some of the word salads, if you will. CNN's Jake Tapper said, "You've been watching CNN's town hall with Kamala Harris and undecided voters less than 2 weeks from the election. A lot of tough questions for the vice president there. It seemed as though the voters were divided into 3 basic groups: liberals who had not heard enough from her, progressives worried that she was not progressive enough, and Republicans who are weary of Donald Trump and wanting to hear more from the vice president. She focused a lot more on Donald Trump. I think it's fair to say than she did on many specifics in terms of what she would do as president." And that's really her campaign, that I'm not Trump. You know, it goes back to Howard Stern's endorsement of Harris, which was, yes, I'm going to vote for you, but I would vote for that wall over Donald Trump. Not a ringing endorsement, but that's really what Harris is going for at this point. Listen, I'm not Trump. Trump's a fascist. He has an enemies list without any real substance, even to the point where the CNN panelists are criticizing her for not putting in any real policy, any real substance, saying, well, that's not what she wanted to do tonight, apparently. But she did go into some of her plans for small businesses and the like. Of course, with only 13 days to go and Trump and Harris fighting over these last few undecided voters, and in fact, trying to get undecided voters to even vote, we'll see whether or not she achieved what she needed to achieve this evening. And many are saying she didn't, but I would love to hear from you if you watched it last night. Now, how am I doing on time? Let's take a short break, and then we'll go through what some of Trump's campaign, what is happening there, but also some more on Harris, because we've told you some of the criticism of Harris. Well, James Carville is making a bold prediction about Harris's campaign. We've got a couple of endorsements, non-endorsements. Then we're going to talk about some polling, so stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Boss Security roof cam starting to look awful nice out there. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Let's go to some viewer comments. Wow, there's a lot of viewer comments coming in this morning. Thank you very much. One last look here. Okay, here we are. I can say from firsthand experience that to have a judge in our area that actually examines all of the evidence provided to Family Court, even though it is a much more lengthy process than most would understand or appreciate. Judge Tarantelli is in a position that is very vital, finding the correct decisions. Thank you very much, and we appreciate Judge Tarantelli being on the program this morning. Next up, who's undecided? I've known who I was going to vote for the last 4 years. I really do think the undecided vote is a little overhyped. How many people, I guess it's really if you can convince, I think it's not that they're undecided, it's just can you convince them to go out and vote? You know, maybe they don't like either candidate, or maybe they're a Democrat and they don't like Harris that much, but they can't vote for Trump, or vice versa. And that's what it's got to be, because to your point, I don't know how you could be undecided. And I don't just mean because you have a position or you're a Republican or you're a Democrat. I'm saying there's such different candidates that what could one or the other say that would make you go, oh, this whole time I wasn't sure, but now I see the difference between you and the opponent. I mean, it's a little wild to think about. All right, next up. Hey, it's Ken. Hi, Ken. Frank, it's off topic, but I heard again yesterday that the Democrats are saying that illegal immigrants are actually better for the country's crime rate because they commit less crime per capita than American citizens do. Republicans say the figures aren't correct or bring up examples like Lake and Riley. I've always wondered why no one states the simple truth. While illegal immigrants may be responsible for a smaller percentage of crime per capita, any crime that they commit is a crime that wouldn't have happened if we had secured borders. Well, that's a very good point. So, and I don't necessarily trust the numbers either when you start talking about gangs, like the Venezuelan gangs, et cetera. But yes, that is a very good point. It's kind of like what we talk about with bail reform, that there's so many victims out there that did not need to be victims because someone got out when they shouldn't have. Here's an example of so many victims that shouldn't be victims because someone entered the country illegally and committed that crime. So thank you very much. All right, James Carville has made a bold prediction for the election, and it was in an op-ed for the New York Times. He said, "Today I am pulling my stool up to the political poker table to throw my chips all in. America, it will all be okay. Ms. Harris will be elected the next president of the United States." And he lays out three reasons why he believes that to be the case. One, Donald Trump is a repeat electoral loser, and his presidency set the Republican Party on a similar course. Harris, by contrast, has managed to whip up comparable enthusiasm in just 3 months of campaigning. Two, Harris has vastly outraised Trump, even with the $75 million donation the latter just received from Elon Musk. And three, Carville simply has a feeling Harris will win, in part because she has aisle-bridging power that her opponent lacks. If the Cheneys and AOC get that the Constitution and our democracy are on the ballot, every true conservative and every true progressive should get it too. Now, what's interesting about that with James Carville, and I think he's fallen into this trap that a lot of political commentators or pundits do, which is he's made so many predictions. I mean, in the past, he said that he didn't think she would win. So it's just interesting. I'm just giving you all the information here that I think you need. Now, Stacey Abrams found a concern. You know Stacey Abrams, a former Georgia gubernatorial candidate. She said on an appearance on CNN, quote, "Full stop misogyny is still real in our community." I just don't like that term "full stop" that people use sometimes. It falls weird on my ears, I guess. "Full stop misogyny is still real in our country. We've got to address it head on and not act like it doesn't exist. The reality is, if black men had voted, Stacey Abrams would be a governor." This is Jamal Bryant, okay? Who said that? I'm sorry, it wasn't Stacey Abrams. That's Jamal Bryant. Abrams agreed with Bryant's assessment that sexism and racism remains a very parental issue, or very pertinent issue, excuse me. "I know it's a shock to everyone." This is now Abrams. "But sexism remains real and a very pertinent issue. But I want us to be really clear that Kamala Harris is doing very well with black men. Black men are the second strongest cohort of Democrat voters. What we're seeing, though, is that she is showing them due respect by actually speaking to their issues. And those issues differ from other cohorts. I'm not quite certain why there is this panic about black men voting. They vote more than their counterparts in any other community for Democrats. However, we do have to acknowledge that there is sexism. There is racism. There are challenges in our electorate, and that's why it's so important that Kamala Harris is going everywhere and talking to everyone. She respects voters, she meets them where they are, and she refuses to be told that she has lost a cohort, lost a community simply because she's different." Now, some were critical. We mentioned it yesterday that she's going to Texas, which is an interesting take. But anyway, I'm jumping around quick because we don't have a lot of time. Warren Buffett, this is very telling. Warren Buffett is not going to pick a side. He is not going to endorse Harris or Trump. But this is why it's interesting. Much like the Teamsters non-endorsement, Buffett has backed Democrats in 3 of the last 4 presidential elections. A memo posted on his website warned of fraudulent claims on social media that Buffett had endorsed a political candidate. In light of the increased usage of social media, there have been numerous fraudulent claims regarding Mr. Buffett's endorsement of investment products as well as his endorsement and support of political candidates. Mr. Buffett does not currently and will not prospectively endorse investment products or endorse and support political candidates. David Marcus has a piece of Fox News suggesting that in Pennsylvania, Kamala's campaign is falling apart, and even Democrats know it. This is not the first time we've had articles relating to the concerns of Democrats in Pennsylvania, saying that there's not much of a ground game there, that the person in charge of the Harris campaign in Pennsylvania is not doing a good job, and that they're losing the messaging battle to Trump and Vance. Now, we talked about James Carville saying he feels in his gut that Harris is going to win, that he's going all in, that Harris is going to win. Well, Nate Silver, who is a Democrat, famed polling guru, okay? They call him an election savant, though I think he got it wrong. You know, like any of these gurus, they get it wrong very often. But he has put his marker down on who his gut is telling him is going to win the presidential election. He said, in an election where the 7 battleground states are polling within a percentage point or two, 50-50, is the only reasonable forecast, that it's 50-50 right now. If you look at his model, the model he uses to predict the race, he has the Republican nominee with 53.1% chance of becoming the 47th president. But he said, when I believe this unsatisfying news, I inevitably got a question. Come on, Nate, what's your gut say? He said, okay, I'll tell you. My gut says Donald Trump, and my guess is that is true for many anxious Democrats. He explained that surveys underestimate Trump's performance in each of the last 2 elections because of non-response bias. And there's a lot of reasons for that. People don't want to go on a limb and say who they support if it's Trump, because it can cost your family, your friends, whatever, your job, if it's discovered that you are a Trump supporter. But there's also a mistrust or a distrust in polling. So if someone is more heavy with Trump supporters. So if you're a Trump supporter and a pollster calls you and says, hey, who are you going to vote for? You very often, some will either say the opposite of what they feel, or they just won't respond. And that's that non-response bias. It's not that Trump voters are lying to pollsters. No, I think there's a few out there. It's that in 2016 and 2020, pollsters weren't reaching enough of them. He added that if Trump does defeat Harris next month, quote, there will have been at least one clear sign of it. Democrats no longer have a consistent edge in party identification. About as many people now identify as Republicans. People often misremember a mistake whom they voted for and are more likely to say they voted for the winner in 2020, Mr. Biden, he said. That's another thing that comes up with these polls. That could plausibly bias the polls against Ms. Harris because people who say they voted for Mr. Biden but actually voted for Mr. Trump will get flagged as new Trump voters when they aren't. All right, enough on that. We got to take a break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Boss Security Roof Cam. Visit Boss Security in Horseheads today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Trump has surged ahead of Harris as 52% of voters approve of the ex-president's time in office, according to new polling. Now, keep this in mind. I want to, in full disclosure, tell you that I don't believe in polls necessarily. I just mention it because sometimes they'll use polls like this to really convince some Trump supporters, you don't need to even bother. It's a landslide. It's over. It's all over but the shouting. There's that, or they'll downplay or start saying, oh no, next week the momentum's back for Harris. So I just bring this to you because I want you to be informed and hear what people are saying. Donald Trump surged ahead of Harris by 2% as 52% of voters now approve of his past job as president, while his Democrat opponent's favorability rating took a hit. Trump took a slight 47 to 45% edge over Harris in a Wall Street Journal poll, a 4-point swing from an August survey in which he had a slight advantage over where she had a slight advantage over the 45th president. Now, Trump claimed yesterday at a rally that Biden's lock him up remark proves the criminal cases against him are politically motivated. We got to lock him up. I told you. He said that, Trump said at that rally in Georgia. Then he denied it. Oh, I didn't mean that because he's not legally allowed to say. He can't say that. Biden backtracked seconds after the slip. Politically, lock him up. Lock him up. That's what we've got to do, the president clarified. Trump isn't buying it, though. He said, I've been telling you that it's election interference. That's all this is. He said, we got to lock him up. This is illegal. It should cause cases. There are crooked people. This is all election interference. These lawsuits are being run by the Department of Justice, the FBI. Biden is behind it all, believe it or not. And he proved that yesterday with this stupid statement. Okay, despite, and this is Jonathan Turley, we quote Jonathan Turley quite frequently. He has a piece out this morning saying, despite the media's caterwauling, which I haven't heard that term in a while, caterwauling, voters aren't buying that Trump is a threat to democracy. Democracy dies in darkness. That's a Washington Post slogan. But can it handle the light? The Post has been doggedly portraying the election between Trump and Harris as a choice between tyranny with Trump and democracy, Harris. Yet when it commissioned a poll on threats to democracy shortly before the election, it did not quite work out. Voters in swing states deemed the greater threat to democracy to be Kamala Harris, who is running on a Save Democracy platform. The poll sampled 5,016 registered voters in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. When asked whether Trump or Harris would do a better job of defending against threats to democracy, 43% picked Trump, while 40% picked Harris. Notably, this was the same result when Biden was the nominee. Even with a slight improvement for Harris, the results were crushing for not just many in Harris's campaign, but the press and the pundits who have been unrelenting in announcing the end of democracy if Harris is not elected. Look at Liz Cheney, who is now being declared the authority on the issue, saying, if you don't vote for Harris, this may well be the last real vote you ever get to cast. Now, Turley says he's long been criticized the apocalyptic democracy-ending predictions of Biden, Harris, and others as ignoring the safeguards in our system against authoritarian power. Nevertheless, Harris supporters have ratcheted up the rhetoric to a level of pure hysteria. Recently, Michael Cohen, a convicted felon and Trump's disbarred former lawyer, told MSNBC that if Trump wins the election, he will get rid of the judiciary and get rid of Congress. Al Sharpton and Donnie Deutsch warned viewers that they were likely to be added to an enemies list. for some type of roundup after a Trump election. Rachel Maddow, had joined in the theme, saying, for that matter, what convinces you that these massive camps he's planning are only for migrants? So yes, I'm worried about me, but only as much as I'm worried about all of us. So the list goes on and on. Whoopi Goldberg, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the apocalyptic end of democracy, kind of the be afraid, be very afraid mindset. And Harris tying in with that on the town hall last night, saying that, yes, she believes that Trump is a fascist. Now, Turley wraps up by saying, however, there is some good news in all this. Despite years of alarmist predictions from Biden, Harris, the press, and pundits, the public is not buying it. It is not because they particularly like Trump. Many of his supporters seem poised to vote for him despite viewing him as polarizing and at times obnoxious. No, it's because the American voter has a certain innate resistance to being played as a chump. Many of the same figures claiming that democracy is at stake supported ballot cleansing to remove Trump and others from the ballot. They supported the weaponization of the legal process in New York against Trump. Likewise, as Harris insists that she is the only hope for fundamental rights, many cannot fail to notice that she is supporting an unprecedented system of censorship that one court called Orwellian. None of this means that the choice between Trump and Harris is easy. However, Harris's claim to be the only hope for democracy is proving as tin-eared as running on pure joy. Voters are clearly demanding more than a political pitch of abject fear mixed with absolute joy. And I thought that was a really good line. Abject fear mixed with absolute pure joy. Let's take our last break. Get ready to wrap things up on today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. Thank you again to Boss Security and Horseheads for the roof cam as we overlook Marcus Street. Broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. A couple comments from viewers as we wrap things up. A viewer saying, to Ken's mentioning of crime and immigrants, my point would be, and make them defend it, when did it become acceptable to make any decision that would allow crimes to be committed by anyone? If immigrants have to follow current laws in place, it already streamlines eliminating immigrants with criminal records. Well, I think I understand what you're saying. Why Biden, Harris, whoever make the decision that, okay, crime is okay for these people. I think that's the point being made, and that's a good point. Ken writes in, I saw on a neighbor's app that someone was adamant that Trump isn't fit to be the president. And to prove their point, they itemized 50 things that Trump has done to show he is unfit. Every point is a partial dialogue from Trump or a right-out lie. All the points are from Dems or the legacy media. My point is that the low-information voter only hears from one side, and unfortunately, they believe what they hear. The problem is a dishonest media. Do you see any way that this can be corrected? In full warning here, I am pessimistic about everything. Keep that in mind. Having said that, I don't think the legacy media is ever going to change, because if the loss in revenue hasn't done it by now, the people cutting the cord, those type of things, if that hasn't done it, I don't think they're going to change. But I do think with outlets like Fox and so many others online, I just point to Fox, but I think there are opportunities for the information to get out, but it is a tough uphill battle. I mean, this has been talked about for decades and decades with really a mad push. I remember when Andrew Breitbart, the late Andrew Breitbart, was talking about how citizen journalists can use the internet to spread the message. And I think many have done that and have done a great job with it. But having a legacy media that's not going to be there to push an agenda, I don't have much hope on that, if I'm being honest. But maybe it takes a huge correction, something to really, because I actually thought after they had it so wrong about Trump in 2016, that maybe some things would change, but all they did was double, triple, quadruple down, and now we see even more of that. Miranda Devine, to kind of piggyback off of what Jonathan Turley said the left puts a target on Donald Trump's back with Nazi and Adolf Hitler smears, and calling him a fascist. Yes, it is very troubling, not toning down the rhetoric, actually increasing the rhetoric. On a man who has had 2 assassination attempts on his life. The Washington Post says, as Democrat icons stump for Harris, GOP elders keep their distance from Trump. This is what they don't get. That's the GOP elders that they reference, the George W. Bushes, the Mitt Romneys, that wouldn't help Trump. That's not who Trump wants to be, right? And that's a good thing. Mitch McConnell, in his new autobiography, says MAGA movement is completely wrong, and Reagan wouldn't recognize Trump's GOP. We've heard that cliche term again, or over and over again. One last thing. House Republicans sparked the fight against campus anti-Semitism. Let's expand their majority. That's right. If you want to fight anti-Semitism, expand the House Republicans' majority. We are out of time for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Thank you to Judge Mary Tarantelli for being on the program. She's running for family court, re-election for family court judge in Chemung County. And thank you to our new friends, Sylvia and Liesel, for being on the program. They told us all about the courting Walk for Life on October 26th, Saturday, in Centerway at 1 p.m. We will see you tomorrow morning, bright and early. Assemblyman Phil Palmisano will be our guest, so make sure you tune in, and we will see you at 6 a.m. I look forward to it already.